Hello and a warm welcome to everyone joining us today. I'm your host Dalvinder Kaur from lovely Professional University. We are excited to have you with us and look forward to an engaging and insightful session today. Sit back, relax, and let's dive into today's topic, that is transforming organic waste into compost, the microbial approach. Before we proceed further of microbiology at lovely professional university, Dr. Agarwal continues to drive innovation in microbiology through her impactful research and academic leadership. With over an H index of 28 and an I index of 53, her excellence in research has earned her prestigious accolades and more. Before we proceed further in today's session, I would like to request everyone for any questions you can write in the chat box or in the Q&A box, and same will be addressed from my side in the end of this webinar. Now I'm going to hand over this session to our expert, Dr. Komal Agarwal, and it would be an absolute delight to listen from her. Over to you, Dr. Komal Agarwal.
Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. Hello everyone. I'll be presenting today transforming organic waste into compost, the microbial approach. As ma'am already said that I'm from Department of Microbiology. So I'm working with microbes, microorganisms, but the aspect here is utilizing them for the welfare of the society, how we can benefit from it, and how we can use it for the benefit of society, or maybe even a commercial perspective, you can use it properly. As you can see from the topic, organic waste. Now, if we need to understand what organic waste is, anything that is biodegradable, anything that is living can come under organic waste. Now, it can be plant waste, it can be agricultural residue, it can be food waste, and many more. We'll be discussing about few types of waste and what treatment modules we can adapt and what we've been doing here, so that you can get an insight into what microbiology can actually do in transforming the life or lives of the people and then ultimately the society. Now, as you all know, composting, I believe, is a term where everybody's heard about it, right? So composting is something that is, or basically we can say something that we've taken from the nature and then giving it back to the nature. But here what we are doing is we are utilizing microbes. Now compost, the terminology or compost itself is not a very new concept. People have been doing this and nature also has been doing this. That is why life is sustaining when it comes to composting. Now, you are using food waste, for example, agricultural waste, vegetable waste, or anything that you are using. And then when the microbes strike in, that is where your composting strikes. Now, composting is something that once it is formed appropriately, it's dark in color, it will be crumbly, it will have an earthy smell to it, and it is a natural decomposition process. Yes, anything and everything that you think you can use it, anything that is organic can be added into a compost. It's the ratio that matters. So we will be not only discussing compost with, but we'll also be discussing how we can contribute to our home by composting, ultimately contributing to our society and to the ecosystem as a whole. So if we start composting, for example, the first question comes is, what is compost? So we've said what is compost, right? I hope everyone is clear on what is compost. But we need to understand what can be used for composting material. Also, we need to understand what are the various scales of composting material. So if we say raw materials, for example, then it can be a green waste compost, right? So when you talk about green waste, it is something that is plant-based material. Anything that is green is plant-based material. Now it can be from your parks, it can be from gardens, it can be from your forest. Anything and everything that is green can come under this category. So it's not necessarily one particular aspect, but any green waste or plant-based waste or any plant material can come into it. Second category is food waste. Now, this food waste is generated from our homes on everyday basis. Now, food waste from our kitchen, for example, if you talk about a small scale, yes, but when we talk about one home, it may be a small scale food waste compost. One home is generating just a handful of compost or a handful of kitchen waste. But when we compare the entire globe, we compare entire houses, we compare entire population, we can only understand how much of food waste compost is coming into the system and how much of it is discarded and how much of it is not utilized. Now, when you talk about, first we talked about green waste compost, second was your food waste compost, and now third comes your industrial compost. Now what is industrial compost? Anything from large scale industries. Now this can not only this is not restricted to your home, but it can be your restaurants also, which are working on large scale. It can be any area wherein food is a source but is working at a larger scale. It can be industries or food industries. We are many
Sorry for the
industries are.
interruption. Ma'am, can you please change your slides?
I'm changing
Slides
my
are not
slide
changing,
now. We are
but
changing. I'm
slides are not
changing.
changing.
It's in the
Can
first
you
slide.
please change? No, this is the first one.
No, ma'am, I've changed the slide. This is the third slide.
Okay, you just change the slides because we are not able to see the slides are changing.
Is it visible now?
No, the slides are not changing.
Should I stop sharing and then reshare it
Yes,
again?
yes, no problem. No problem. Yes, ma'am. The slides are changing now.
Is it visible
Thank you.
now?
You can continue.
Okay. So first we talked about the types of raw materials that we can use for compost. Yes. So first is a green waste compost. You can find it in your garden area also. You can find it in the lawn area also. You can collect it from the park also. Now second type of compost is what you see it in your home. Yes, what you see day to day life. And the third is the industrial compost. As we have been discussing, now it will come from bigger restaurants. It can come from your industries which are food oriented. Now this not only generate a very small amount, they generate huge quantities of waste that go into the landfill. So when we compare all these three categories together, we can only understand how many tons of food waste is generated. Now, industry is something that industrial composting will be done, but there is one composting segment that we can manage individually, and that is your food waste compost. Yes, and that is how we can contribute to the society and ultimately to our environment. Now, so we've got an insight into what is compost. We've understood about what are the different materials can be used for composting. And now we will understand how many processes of composting is there. So one is aerobic. Now aerobic basically stands for in the presence of oxygen. So any decomposition basically that is happening in the presence of oxygen is a aerobic composting. That means you can do it in an open space. You are not restricted to cover it. Oxygen should come in contact with it. Now, second form of composting is your anaerobic composting, and in this you'll have to seal pack the composting so that an anaerobic condition is created, and then only your decomposition is happen. In anaerobic, we have to make sure that oxygen is missing. Then only your energy or bioenergy gas like biogas, methane and all are generated. So over here an anaerobic condition has to be maintained. Now, when you talk about aerobic and aerobic, this is where microbiology comes in. This type of decomposition is done by your microorganisms, or we so-called bacteria that we know today. But in aerobic, it is something that uses oxygen, and anaerobic is a microorganism that works properly only in the absence of oxygen. Now, third, major form of composting, maybe you all have heard about it. This is vermicomposting. Basically, you are using worms to break down your organic material. A very common form of composting that has been done since many ages, plus commercialization has also been done. When we've understood composting, now I guess you all have an understanding that composting is a process wherein it is something that organic material is degraded, and what we get is a compost which is fertile. But how does it happen? It happens in the presence of microbes. Now, method what you are wanting to choose, whether aerobic or anaerobic, is your choice and is as per the availability, right? Now, second, if you say compost, then we need to understand certain features. See, when composting is happening, the temperature, bulk density, particle size, pH, carbon to nitrogen ratio, conductivity and moisture content, everything has to be well arranged, or everything has to be in such a way that it contributes to being an efficient compost. Now, see, when we are talking about compost, we are talking about something that is fertile, something that is rich in nutrients, and something that is generated from waste, right? So I believe the concept of composting is clear. Now I'll put a little bit of microbiology into it. So when you are talking about composting, there are various materials that we utilize. Now, you can use kitchen waste, as said earlier, you can use your garden waste, you can use anything from your forest or lawn area, or you can even take something from industrial significance. What we do here is we are basically trying to add microbes to it through a source and then initiate the process of decomposition. Now, where will the microbes come from? That would be the question. Now there are two ways to it. One is you can add an additional source of microorganisms, or the second, we can use the natural microflora that is present in the environment and do the composting. When you are talking about microorganisms, a very important source of microbe in microbiology is soil. Whenever you start studying microbiology, in the very first practical, in the theory class as well, students in the very beginning learn where microbes come from. And one source that universally is taught everywhere is soil. Soil is regarded as a biodiversity of microbes. When you talk about soil, it has every type of organism in it, from bacteria to fungi to good and bad microbes and everything. But when you talk about soil, it is something that is present in nature. Now, soil, I'm putting an emphasis here because soil plays a very important role when composting comes into play. For example, if I'll give you an understanding, a soil when you take from a desert region is something that will not hold water, something that is not fertile, and something that will not support plant growth. But similarly, if you take soil maybe from a forest environment wherein shrubs are there, insects are there, higher animals are there, trees are there, what you will do is you will see that in soil the microbes are thriving, fungi will be thriving because they are natural decomposers. Now, how are they important? Now, soil wherein a green or the environment is sustaining itself, you will see when, or rather I'll put it this way, when I say something that we are taking from the nature goes back to the nature. Now, this is a cycle. When any plant is there, when any insect is there, when any higher living entity is there, once they uh, die in the environment, what happens is a decomposition process takes over. When that decomposition happens, they basically become a nutrient source for all the natural living processes in the environment. First line of decomposition that happens is through fungi. Another line of decomposition is through your bacteria, and maybe another microbes will come. Now this also is a cycle. So you can understand that a soil that you take from a region which is not very fertile, for example, your desert area will not have that type of microbes. But similarly, if you take a soil, maybe your garden soil, or maybe anything from a lawn, or maybe from a forest area, or anywhere a habitat is thriving, even 1 gram of soil will have so much of biodiversity that it can allow you, or basically act as an inoculum, or maybe for clearer understanding, I can say a starter culture for initiating your compost. Now, composting is not a very simple process as we talk about. Yes. So when we start composting, we need to understand certain things, that we are wanting to do compost. Why? We are wanting to do compost because we are wanting to use our waste material or recycle waste material. Second, we are wanting to do composting because we want to reduce the amount of waste that we've generated. Now, this comes the technical. Now, over here, what will it do? It will contribute to sustainability, recyclability, utilization of waste. Now, second, after this comes is how to do composting. Many people, you must have heard, you must have seen many videos or reels coming in that we are composting, we are using waste. But how do we even do it when we are not knowing how many layers of composting is required, what type of compost is required? So what you can do as an individual is you can do composting individually as well as your home and contribute to the society. Now, first thing that you require for composting is something that can help maintain the temperature as well as allow aeration. Now, we don't want to do anaerobic composting here. We want to do something that we can do it in our day-to-day lives and then utilize microbiology wonderfully for creating something that can be of benefit to the environment. So, how do we start the process? So, first we take dry leaves. Now, dry leaves, they will basically, what they'll do is they'll create air pockets that will act as an insulation and help in regulating the temperature around your composting container. Then comes your soil. Soil becomes an important parameter because soil is the inoculum without which nothing would happen. This soil would basically allow you to initiate your decomposition process. Now, this soil can be taken from your environment, from your pots or from market or lawn area. And then you want to understand what type of waste you are targeting. For example, I'm staying in a city area, I can target kitchen waste only. It's not necessarily that you need multiple amount of waste. I just want to target small pocket of waste, that is my household waste, then you can consider only kitchen waste. But for example, if in a state like Punjab, wherein you all are having household waste, but you see outside the house there is field also, that means you'll be generating agricultural waste as well. So how could you basically utilize the waste that is created inside the house as well as waste that is generated after farming? Now, what we did here was we focused on all this aspect, and what my UG students are doing here is basically designed a setup wherein they utilized dry leaves, they utilized soil as an inoculant, and they said that we can target organic waste, that is waste that we generate inside the house, as well as when we go outside, we can target or focus on your industrial or agricultural waste. Now, agricultural waste is a global problem. When you talk about agriculture, India being an agricultural country, the amount of agricultural waste that is generated is humongous. You must have seen or you can see and refer to papers, or you can see information or normal Googling, you can figure out how much of waste is generated annually, and then you can see, if we can compost, we can basically contribute or maybe play a very critical role in reducing and recycling waste. So this is the prime focus here, right? Now, what would be the materials required when you start doing composting in the initial phase? You can take an earthen pot. We do not want to create more plastic waste. So you would rather maybe choose something that is biodegradable, which is easily accessible and which is not uh, uh, which at the end of the process would not generate more waste. So over here, the requirement would be your earthen pot. Another is, if you are in a city area or anywhere where agriculture is not working, you can simply focus on utilizing your vegetable or kitchen waste. Second comes your soil. Then, if for example you can avail agricultural waste, it would be a good point to utilize any form of agricultural waste. Now, agricultural waste would be rice straw, wheat straw, sugarcane bagasse. It can be any crop. Once the crop has been harvested, any straw or bagasse or residue that is generated is your agricultural waste. So you can utilize this, and then your dried leaves. So the layering is important here, as how you are wanting to layer. Like if you are having your earthen pot, you are having a bucket, you are having any container. Yes, you can just cover it with anything. Any container would do. A small container would do. Maybe in the initial it would always be a good choice to start with a smaller container, and then maybe when confidence comes in, you can do it with a bigger container. So first should be layering the earthen pot with soil, with leaves. Now leaves has to be less in quantity. You do not want to cover the entire pot with leaves, plus they are dried leaves, the density is less, they'll occupy more space. So we would maybe crush leaves little bit, ensuring that the air pockets are created, and we'll lay a fine layer of leaves. What we will be doing next is we'll take in soil. We'll take a soil and then put the second layer, but soil has to be in a very good quantity. Yes. And then kitchen waste and agricultural waste. Again, kitchen waste we can take a good amount because it is fresh material, it is high in density. And then fourth comes your agricultural waste. Now again, when you talk about leaves and when you talk about agricultural waste, you will understand these are dried components. They are low in density and they'll occupy more surface area. When you talk about kitchen waste, it is high. When you talk about leaves and when you talk about agricultural waste, they have low density. When you talk about kitchen waste, they have high density. Whereas when you talk about soil, it has finer particles and occupies more surface area. It would always be a good choice to first streamline the size of all the particles, crush it to a suitable size. Once you decrease the size, surface area for microbial activity will increase. Once that is done, what you can do is put a layer of leaves, then put a layer of soil, kitchen waste and agricultural waste. Now this is just the first layer. Now again, after agricultural waste, you would want to put a layer of soil. Done. So first layer comes wherein leaves, soil, kitchen waste, agricultural waste and then soil. This is your first step of composting. Now few parameters to be considered here before you start composting is size. And then second very important parameter is the moisture content. You do not want watery type of composting material, and that would not initiate the growth of good bacteria but rather bad bacteria. And then composting, instead of being something that is odorless and that is beneficial to the environment, would become slimy and it would stink. Now, composting, if done properly, is odorless. But if composting is not done appropriately and if it starts stinking, then next it will target is your insects, other types of your fungal growth. You do not want that happening. So in order to avoid that contamination, slimy growth, foul smell, you need to understand that the moisture content of the compost has to be well regulated. And one thing that regulates your odor control in your compost is your soil. So the ratio of soil has to be in a good amount so that all this or the back side of the compost is not done. So you need a very well moisture regulated material. You do not want it to be too wet, but you do not want it to be too dry as well. Now, coming to first thing, once you've done the first layer, depending upon the volume of your container, you can add as many layers as possible. So if I'll give you a brief insight here, it would be leaves, soil, kitchen waste, agricultural waste, soil. And then repeat again, leaves, soil, kitchen waste, agricultural waste and then soil. Now you can do till the system is full. Now the base was leaves. The topmost also would you want it to be leaves, so that again the insulation would be maintained. Cover the lid of your container and then keep it aside. Usually when you are only using kitchen waste, it would take around 30 days if done appropriately. But if you are using agricultural waste, it can take anywhere from 60 to 90 days, depending on how you are doing it. I hope this is clear. So now this is something that BSc microbiology students of the final year are doing. To give a brief insight, these capstone students, they've done small scale composting production and now they are upscaling it, or maybe we are trying in a bigger volume so that maybe we can figure out what proportions work well when we want to upscale the composting process. We've utilized good amount of industrial waste here that is coming from an industrial collaboration. We've also utilized kitchen waste from the canteen that comes from LPU, plus from the field what agricultural waste we are getting. So basically the UG students themselves have targeted three different problem aspects here. One is targeting industrial waste for composting, second is targeting the kitchen waste from the mess, and third is targeting the field waste that we generate here. So basically they've designed a process that is sustainable. that is reducing waste and then giving back everything to the nature, but in a fertile form. One thing about your composting is you have to mix it every time because it is an aerobic process. So you want aeration to happen. Yes, leaves will contribute to aeration, but manual mixing will basically enhance the process flow. Saying all these things, when I said composting, materials being used, students are working in laboratory, the first things that come into your mind or should come into your mind is, can you do it? So I believe you all should be able to do it, and maybe by getting an insight of what the layers are, what waste you can target, I believe you can do it. Second is, if you think you can do it, the thing would come, where do you think would be the target areas? I believe we've discussed enough for you to understand that it can come from home, the first section. It can be vegetables, fruit and peels, leftover vegetable scraps, tea leaves, coffee grounds, eggshells, dried leaves from house plants, shredded newspapers or cardboards, garden trimmings. Ensure that plastic is not there. Anything non-biodegradable is not there. Second, if you feel I've done successfully in home and I've tried it and troubleshooted it, maybe you can go to your organization where you're working and then take in waste from your school also, because canteens are there, students are having lunch, so you can take in fruit peel, leftovers from lunch break, which is also generated in good amount. Use paper towels, napkins, dry leaves of school garden, grass clippings from lawn maintenance, plant trimmings, canteen area waste, which is again a very huge amount it is generated depending on the scale of your organization. Third comes your garden area, lawn area, your forest in and around your home, field. So from here you can take fallen leaves from parks and gardens, fruits and vegetable waste that you can see there, coffee grounds, manure from nearby. You can take manure from your farms and also add it to your composting material. That will basically enhance the microbial load there. And then grass clippings and small branches that you can see or pick from your nearby landscape area. So if you feel you can do it, what you can do is you can target these particular areas, maybe start at a home scale, then maybe start focusing on the waste that is generating in when you are studying or working, and then maybe your environment, because slowly upscaling could also be done. This can be done individually and will contribute substantially to your environment. Now, what will it contribute to, or how will you contribute? If you see 50% or more than 50% of the waste that is generated globally is from 20 of the 50%, 21% is food scraps alone that comes from your restaurants, from your home and any food industry. 15% is your paperboard waste, 8% is your yard trimmings, and another 8% is your wood waste. So if we talk about different types of waste entering into your landfill or in your dumping yard, 50% approximately is a waste that is generated from foods, paper and paperboard, yard trimmings and wood waste, and these all are biodegradable waste. These basically, when thrown into landfill, will create pollution, pollute the surrounding soil, ultimately polluting the surrounding environment, air and water. Now, because it is a landfill, it will increase the temperature because greenhouse gas will also be emitted, so climate change. And because once degradation starts, because it is not a composting process, it is a decomposition process, or basically what that is happening under unregulated way, it results in human health hazard as well, because landfill is not only about your kitchen waste or restaurant waste or food waste, but industrial waste as well. So when this good waste is also going into landfill mixed with any other waste, it also becomes an health hazard. What you can do or how you can contribute it, more than half of the greenhouse gas emission from landfills come from wasted food. What you can do is, if individually we become conscious, if individually we start composting our materials at our home, we can decrease the greenhouse gas emission. If only 50% reduction in waste is done, imagine the amount of contribution we would do to the ecosystem. Now, because greenhouse gas emission is reduced by 50%, climate resilience will also increase. Carbon sequestration will also happen. That means applying or using carbon or controlled release of carbon, and then the compost that you've generated would go down the environment and allow in increasing your agricultural yield. increase the crop productivity and sustain your ecosystem microflora and fauna. So when you all know that when environment sustains, everything sustains. So this is where your composting comes into play. Further, in the concluding section, see, if you understand this process here, we have a food that is locally grown in our environment. So something that is coming where we are staying. We take those food to our home, we cook it, we generate food scraps. These food scraps are small scale collections is done. If societal level is done, for example, first you do individually and then maybe you can start with your society, and small scale collection facility is done in your society. You can take it to a place where composting can be done. Now, whatever food scrape you've generated, once the compost is formed, you give back to the field from where your food came. So it becomes a cyclic process. Now, in this entire process, everything came from the nature, went back to the nature. Nothing is going back to the land flame and no waste is generated. So this is what composting is. But one important parameter here is microbiology. So microbes and then your aerobic environment. Now, we've understood significant amount of composting, types of composting, how we can do it. We've understood about the layering process. I believe it is time where we can see how the demonstration can be done so that once you get a visual aid, you understand how to do it individually, right? Now, first things first, safety. We are dealing with waste here. So we would first think about our safety, because when we are safe, everyone is safe, right? So whenever you are dealing with microbiology, we are not only responsible for others' safety, we are not only responsible for our safety, but we are responsible for the safety of others. Now, when you come into microbiology as a domain, or maybe when you start understanding how microbiology works, you will understand that it's microbes, something we cannot see, right? So we always have to keep in mind that maybe it is harmful, maybe it can create something that we are not wanting, or maybe we can have an impact. Though we are talking about good microbes here, but we also need to understand that they are microbes at the end of the day, right? So first thing, now we've created this thing. See, this is a glass container to give you a visual understanding of maybe how it will look like when you start doing. So a visual understanding will give you clarity of how things will work. So see, first your leaves. So you are wanting to take your leaves and maybe crush it. Sufficient enough to a size wherein you are not reducing it to a powder, but a good enough size so that the base is covered. You want a good covering of the base, right? Now this becomes your insulation layer to regulate the temperature, plus because these are dry leaves, if in case the moisture becomes excess, it will absorb the excess moisture. So we do not want too much of water. Too much of water means bad bacteria will grow. So we want a regulated amount of moisture. Second, soil. So this soil, you are not wanting a soil which does not support the growth of microbes, but we are wanting a soil which is fertile. So this is a very important step wherein we are wanting a fertile soil, because fertile soil will have good microbes and they basically have good microflora to it. So once you take in your soil, we want a good amount of soil to be added. Sufficiently or good enough to cover your leaves. Now once you've added your soil sample, Now till now we are having moisture that is less. Yes. Now second comes your kitchen waste. We've already shredded it to smaller particle size, as you can see. So you shred it. Smaller the surface area or smaller the particle size, more would be the surface area of exposure. So smaller particle size means more amount of surface exposure to the bacteria to act upon. Now soil is there. So layer of leaf, that is your insulation. You have your layer of soil, that is your microbial inoculum, and then comes your waste. So we do not want it too much. We want a good exposure to all the surface, ensuring you are not having any wet waste here. You want the moisture from your kitchen waste to be drained out. You do not want excess of moisture. Now, if you feel there is moisture or excess of moisture, depending if you have agricultural waste available in the surrounding area, you can regulate the addition. Now, these are dry waste. So, what they'll do is they'll regulate the moisture content. You have to understand that it should not be too dry, but it should not be too wet, because if it is too dry, composting would not happen. It will be very slow process, or maybe it will not happen. And if it is too wet, then bad microbes will come in. So we want the moisture to be regulated. So once we've done with your lignocellulosic material, again comes your inoculum. So basically what we're doing, we're sandwiching our kitchen waste and our lignocellulose within two layers of your soil. So this is your. So once you've done this, what you will do is sprinkle little amount of water, so that little bit of moisture is regulated. That is it, little amount. So this is your, once you are done. So this is your leaf. The soil, and then your, because then you will create a space wherein microbial activity is good. If it is too thick a layer, then again aeration and many more parameters will be hampered. So again lignocellulose, and now again second layer of sandwiching with the soil. If you feel addition of water is completely out of choice, for example, if you feel the moisture is less, add in water. If you feel the moisture is okay, no need of adding it. You can add it after maybe 1 or 2 layers. You can skip. I'll add it because it's a comparatively dry. Now again, the third layer. So maybe this, what we are doing is aerobic. So we'll not cover this. We'll just cover it with a plank or something. Now again the soil, and then again the kitchen waste. And then again your lignocellulosic waste. Soil. Now we would want to cover this entire thing. Right? Again little bit of water. Little bit of water, not much. Then so again leaves. Finer the layer, better would be your decomposition. And then again your kitchen waste. And then your lignocellulosic waste. That is it. You want space for mixing as well. So you will keep some space empty. Put a good layer of soil here that will act as your inoculum. Add in water, and then now cover it with soil. This is your last insulation. You want some space to remain empty so that you can mix it and aeration happens and thermal regulation also happens here. So this is how your composting can work. Now, this is a demonstration for you so as to you understand how composting works. This is what our students have done. So this is your earthen pot. This is your composting using kitchen waste and wheat straw, and it has already been composted. We just completed the set yesterday. So when we did this or we started the composting, the entire earthen pot was filled. Now it's just half the content. So once the decomposition starts, what happens is the volume decreases. So as you all can see, the volume has decreased. You have a good composting material which is dark in color. As you can see, its particle size are well. It's not very moist but not very dry, and it has a good water holding capacity. So this is what you get now. Basically is your compost which is ready to be used immediately, but you would want to mix this compost with soil. Mix it with soil, usually in the ratio of 6:4, 8:2, depending what works for you. Mix it with the soil or add it to the soil, and then see your plants growing well as compared to only soil. So this is your practical demonstration of composting. I hope you all have understood how microbiology works for composting as well. Done. Thank you from my side. Any questions? Any queries?
Thank you so much, Dr. Komal Agarwal. Can we take some questions, Dr. Komal?
Yes, definitely.
Thanks for giving me a chance to address your questions. Now let's start with the first question. Megha is asking here, what role do microorganisms play in breaking down organic waste during the compositing process?
Now see, when you are talking, if I'll say for example your kitchen waste, you are having different types of waste, right? It is something that is in a complex form of nutrients. When it's a simple process, why do you eat food? You eat food so that you can get energy from it. What does your body do once you consume your food? It breaks down into a complex form of energy into a simpler form. So for example, glucose, whenever we all are consuming glucose, it's a simpler form of sugar. Our body can get energy from it. Now that is for humans or higher organisms. But when you talk about your microorganisms, they do not want food source, or they are not like us. They are not reliant on cooking food or whatever. They use whatever is in the nature. So what they do is they take down this complex materials, that is your food waste, or they can take your agricultural waste, that is your rice straw, wheat straw, anything. They have their own enzymatic action on it. Now they'll act on it. Now because this is a food to them, any food is a food, to be it bacteria, be it us, it is food at the end of the day. So what happens when we consume food? From a complex form, it's broken down into a simpler form that is accessible. So what they do is, we have given them the food through soil, we've added the inoculum, they are consuming the food. Once the consumption is done, they're breaking down the food and releasing something that is in the simpler form. That is what your compost is. So basically microbes play a very important role in composting by breaking down the complex forms into simpler forms. Now, if I'll give you a basic example, nature. Forget about humans. When humans were not there, nature was surviving. But how was nature surviving? With the help of microbes, right? Now, so many life forms have come in the face of earth till date. If nature was not doing its part, when everything or something was sacrificed by nature, it would have piled up. But decomposition becomes a very important process. That is where the sentence comes. What comes from the nature goes back to the nature. That is where your microbes comes into play. That is why your soil is a rich source of microbes. They come, they break, they return everything to the nature, thereby sustaining balance. So this is where composting also comes into play.
Thank you so much. I hope Gurpreet, you got to answer from our expert. Megha is asking here, which types of microbes are most effective in composting and how do their function differ?
See, now if you are using kitchen waste, they are comparatively simpler form of your waste as compared to your agricultural waste. So when you talk about food waste, you will have simpler forms of microorganism coming in. But when you talk or when you focus on degrading agricultural waste, it would not be that simple because agricultural waste, you must have studied components of plant. It is lignin, hemicellulose and cellulose. Therein your saprotrophic organism comes in. Now here, usually when you talk about kitchen, it is breakdown of more or less a simple constituent into something that is accessible. But when lignocellulosic come in or agricultural, it is complex form to that simpler forms and then to the energy source. So microbes in case of your lignocellulose would be different, which can degrade lignin. But in case of kitchen waste or something, they would not require that feature, which is lignin is not there. Now, what is lignin? You must have seen the hard cover on the outer core of your rice or kernels. Those are hydrophobic in nature. They are not easily degraded. But if you take a rice kernel, it is easily degraded. That is sheer carbohydrate. But when you take the kernel, it is lignin. It's recalcitrant in nature. That is a coating given by the nature so that your grain is protected. That is not easily degraded. So depending upon your content, the microbes will vary, the process will vary. That is why we say soil is a biodiversity. So different microbes will come in. It will vary. We cannot point out one, but yes, depending on location, temperature, it may vary.
Thank you so much, Dr. Komal Agarwal. I hope all the participants got their answers from our expert. If you have any questions regarding admissions, you just write on us at admissions@lpu.co.in, and you can do WhatsApp chat with us. Our WhatsApp number is 985256900. I'm repeating the number. It's 985256900. As we come to the end of this webinar, I want to express my deepest gratitude to our experts for sharing their valuable insights and expertise with us. Your presence, enthusiasm, and active participation have made this experience truly special. Hopefully, the attendees found this webinar to be valuable and will be able to utilize the information for better decision making regarding admissions. If anyone wants to access this webinar again, they can visit our website, that is lpu.in, or can be accessed on YouTube also. Stay connected with us for future webinars. Until we meet again, with the permission of my seniors, I would be signing off this webinar. Take care and goodbye. Have a beautiful day.